15 of the world's most iconic fashion designers, each one consumed by the shimmering universe they helped create. Behind the cameras, the runways, and the endless glamour lived sleepless nights, unbearable pressure, and the silent cost of perfection. Tonight, we uncover the hidden price of beauty and the stories of those who gave everything until there was nothing left to give. Number 1. Karl Lagerfeld. On February 19, 2019, the fashion world fell into silence. Karl Lagerfeld, the unstoppable force behind Chanel, Fendi, and his own label, was gone. For decades, he lived at a pace no human could sustain, creating collections, directing campaigns, shaping photo shoots, and overseeing global visions without pause. Sleep was rare, rest was unwanted, and perfection was the only language he spoke. Born in Hamburg and raised by ambition, Karl moved to Paris as a teenager, determined to carve his place in haute couture. He became known for his sharp mind and even sharper discipline, famously calling himself a machine. Those who worked with him admired his brilliance but remembered the exhaustion that followed in his wake. Vacations did not exist in his world. Slowing down meant fading away, and fading away was unacceptable. By the 2000s, Lagerfeld was leading 3 major fashion houses at once. Every detail mattered to him, from the lining of a Chanel jacket to the angle of light on a runway stage. He demanded excellence not only from himself, but from everyone around him. His greatest fear was time itself. The idea that creativity could run out, or that he would lose the relevance he worked so fiercely to protect. As the years passed, his body began to show signs of strain. Yet he refused to rest, choosing work over health, ideas over recovery. Even when fatigue became visible, his mind stayed sharp, always locked on the next season, the next vision, the next reinvention. When news of his death reached Paris, the lights of Chanel dimmed. His empty seat became a symbol of both genius and sacrifice. Karl Lagerfeld's legacy reminds the world that even legends can be consumed by the passion that builds them. Number 2. Alexander McQueen. On February 11, 2010, the fashion world was shaken to its core. Alexander McQueen, the visionary who turned runways into emotional theaters, was gone at only 40. His genius was unmatched, but behind every breathtaking show were years of exhaustion, pressure, and emotional wounds that never fully healed. Fame elevated him, but it also tightened around him like a silent cage. Born in London, McQueen began as a tailor's apprentice, mastering precision before moving into the world of haute couture. His graduation collection caught the eye of Isabella Blow, who bought it instantly and became his greatest supporter. From that moment, McQueen's rise was meteoric. He became head designer at Givenchy, then launched his own label, pushing boundaries with every show. But each success added more weight. He once said that creating a new world every 6 months left no room for peace. By the early 2000s, the pressure intensified. His collections were bold, haunting, and unforgettable. But behind the scenes, he was working relentlessly, sleeping little, and fighting to meet impossible expectations. Every show had to outdo the last. Every idea had to shock, inspire, and transform. The industry called him a genius, but that title came with a cost he carried alone. The deaths of his mentor Isabella Blow in 2007 and his beloved mother 3 years later shattered him. Grief settled into his life quietly, becoming another burden on top of fame, deadlines, and creative pressure. Even as he prepared for his next show, the weight became too much. When news of his death spread, tributes poured in from around the world, each one acknowledging the magnitude of his brilliance and the depth of his struggle. Alexander McQueen's legacy remains one of raw emotion, innovation, and a reminder that even the brightest creative fire can burn too intensely to survive. Number 3. Kate Spade. On June 5, 2018, New York City woke to heartbreaking news. Kate Spade, a designer whose colorful handbags symbolized joy, confidence, and modern femininity, was gone. Her brand had become a global icon, yet behind the bright patterns and playful spirit was a woman quietly carrying years of pressure, expectations, and emotional exhaustion. The world saw her cheerful designs, but not the weight she held inside. Born Catherine Brosnahan in Kansas City, she began her career as a fashion editor before launching her own line in 1993 with her husband, Andy Spade. What started with just 6 handbag designs grew into one of the most beloved names in American fashion. Her clean, charming, instantly recognizable style made her a favorite among celebrities and everyday women alike. Success came fast, but so did the demands. Endless meetings, creative decisions, marketing campaigns, and the pressure to stay ahead in a ruthless industry. By 2006, after years of nonstop work, she sold her shares in the company to finally step away from the spotlight. But stepping away didn't erase the toll those years had taken. Even as she returned to design years later with her new label, Frances Valentine, the expectations still followed her. Maintaining relevance in a rapidly changing fashion world became another silent burden she struggled to carry. Friends and colleagues later revealed how dedicated she was, how deeply she cared about every detail, and how quietly she absorbed the pressure. Her passing stunned the world, leaving a reminder that success can hide struggles no one sees. Tributes poured in from fans, designers, and women who had grown up with her joyful vision. Kate Spade's legacy is one of creativity, optimism, and the unseen battles that even the brightest spirits can face. Number 4. Virgil Abloh. On November 28, 2021, the world lost one of its most influential creative minds. Virgil Abloh, the visionary who bridged streetwear and luxury fashion, passed away at just 41. His rise was fast, brilliant, and relentless, fueled by endless ideas, non-stop travel, and a workload few could endure. Behind his groundbreaking success was a man quietly fighting exhaustion, expectations, and an illness he kept hidden from the world. Born in Rockford, Illinois to Ghanaian parents, Abloh studied civil engineering before earning a master's degree in architecture. His curiosity stretched across art, music, fashion, and design. In the early 2000s, he met Kanye West, joining his creative team and entering the luxury world's harsh, demanding rhythm. That partnership opened doors, but also introduced the relentless pace that would define his life. In 2012, Virgil launched Off-White, instantly reshaping what fashion could be. Quotation marks, bold stripes, industrial belts, each design carried his signature mix of irony and innovation. Collaborations with Nike, IKEA, and major artists followed, and soon he was everywhere at once. The world celebrated him, but few understood the pressure behind the scenes. Every year brought new collections, global tours, exhibitions, and responsibilities that left little room for rest. By 2018, Louis Vuitton appointed him as artistic director of menswear, the first black designer to hold the position. The honor was historic, but the expectations were enormous. His schedule became a blur of flights, late-night emails, and creative deadlines. Meanwhile, he had been privately battling a rare form of cancer since 2019, continuing to design even during treatment. He chose to suffer in silence, determined to work until the end. When the news of his death reached the world, the shock was immediate. Tributes poured in from designers, artists, musicians, and millions inspired by his vision. Virgil Abloh's story is one of brilliance, ambition, and a reminder that even the most innovative spirits can be worn down by the weight of their own greatness. Number 5. Christian Dior. On October 23, 1957, the world of haute couture fell into mourning. Christian Dior, the man who reinvented post-war fashion with elegance and discipline, had died suddenly. His creations shaped an era, yet behind the beauty was a life driven by relentless pressure, constant travel, and an obsession with perfection that consumed him until his final days. The glamour of his designs hid the exhaustion of the man who created them. Born in Granville, France, Dior first pursued a career in art before finding his way into fashion in the late 1930s. He opened his own house in 1946, supported by businessman Marcel Boussac, and just a year later unleashed the revolutionary new look. It transformed silhouettes, revived luxury after years of wartime austerity, and made Dior the most powerful name in fashion almost overnight. But with greatness came a burden he felt every day. Each season demanded innovation. Each show had to redefine beauty. Dior became a symbol of hope and sophistication, but he carried the weight of an empire on his shoulders. He traveled constantly, overseeing global boutiques and maintaining direct control over every sketch, every fitting, every detail. His charm and sensitivity made him beloved, but his perfectionism left little room for rest. By the mid-1950s, the pressure had become overwhelming. Friends noticed his growing fatigue, but Dior refused to slow down. Fame demanded everything from him: his time, his energy, his health. During a trip to Italy in October 1957, his body could no longer withstand the strain. His sudden passing stunned Paris. The fashion world dimmed its lights. His protégé, Yves Saint Laurent, stepped into his place. But Dior's absence left a shadow that would never fade. Christian Dior's legacy endures in every piece of elegance he introduced to the world. And his story remains a reminder that even the most refined beauty can come from a life pushed far beyond its limits. Number 6. Oscar de la Renta. On October 20, 2014, the world of fashion said goodbye to one of its most beloved figures. Oscar de la Renta, the designer whose gowns defined sophistication for first ladies, Hollywood icons, and royalty, had passed away. His work exuded elegance and confidence, yet his life behind the scenes was a relentless cycle of creation, travel, and responsibility that pushed him far beyond the limits of rest. Born in Santo Domingo in 1932, Oscar left home at 18 to study art in Madrid. His talent led him to apprentice under the legendary Cristobal Balenciaga before moving on to Paris and then New York, where he would transform American fashion. By the 1960s, his name had become synonymous with timeless glamour. His dresses graced the bodies of Jacqueline Kennedy, Nancy Reagan, and countless stars who trusted his eye completely. Though admired for his charisma and warmth, Oscar worked endlessly. Each season brought new collections, fittings, and global commitments, often at a pace that allowed no room for pause. He designed not just for his own label, but also for major fashion houses in Europe, balancing multiple empires with tireless discipline. Assistants remembered nights when he refused to leave the studio until every stitch felt perfect. In the early 2000s, health challenges began to appear, but Oscar pushed forward with the same energy that had defined his career. Friends urged him to slow down, yet he insisted that creating was what kept him alive. Even in his final years, he maintained a packed schedule of meetings, sketches, and studio time, driven by a devotion that never faded. His passing in 2014 triggered a wave of tributes from designers, celebrities, and admirers across the globe. They remembered his kindness, his brilliance, and the passion that shaped decades of fashion. Oscar de la Renta's legacy stands as a testament to beauty crafted through discipline, love, and a lifetime of tireless dedication. Number 7. Gianni Versace. On July 15, 1997, the world awoke to devastating news from Miami Beach. Gianni Versace, one of fashion's most fearless and influential designers, had been killed. His death shocked the globe, but long before that tragic morning, the relentless pace of his life had already taken a heavy toll. For decades, Versace lived in constant motion, building an empire fueled by bold vision, perfectionism, and unending pressure. Born in Reggio Calabria, Italy, in 1946, Gianni grew up surrounded by fabrics in his mother's dressmaking shop. He learned the craft early and developed an eye for drama, art, and storytelling. By the 1970s, he moved to Milan and launched his own label in 1978, a brand that would redefine glamour. His prints were loud, his silhouettes fearless, and his shows unforgettable. Versace didn't follow trends, he created them. The 1980s and 90s marked the peak of his empire. He oversaw everything: sketches, fittings, advertising, fragrances, even runway choreography. Supermodels like Naomi Campbell, Cindy Crawford, and Linda Evangelista became the faces of his world. But behind the spectacle was a man who rarely stopped to breathe. Friends recalled the late nights, the endless revisions, and the immense pressure of running a global fashion house that demanded constant reinvention. By the mid-1990s, success had grown into something enormous, beautiful but heavy. Gianni pushed through fatigue, illness, and stress, always determined to elevate the brand he built from nothing. Every collection had to be bolder, faster, more powerful. His schedule allowed little peace, and resting meant falling behind in an industry that never slowed down. His sudden death in 1997 stunned the world, marking the end of an era. Donatella Versace stepped forward to continue the brand, but Gianni's absence left a void impossible to replace. His legacy lives on in the fearless aesthetic he created, sensual, daring, and unmistakably his. Gianni Versace's life reminds us that brilliance can burn intensely, even dangerously, when pushed beyond human limits. Number 8. Halston. On March 26, 1990, the fashion world lost one of its most magnetic and mysterious figures. Halston, the man who once dressed the most glamorous women in America, passed away quietly in San Francisco. His name had defined luxury, simplicity, and effortless elegance. But behind the dazzling nightlife of Studio 54 and the glittering fronts of Manhattan, Halston lived under an endless weight of work, perfection, and pressure that gradually consumed him. Born Roy Halston Frowick in Des Moines, Iowa in 1932, he began his career as a milliner before rising to fame when Jacqueline Kennedy wore one of his pillbox hats to the 1961 presidential inauguration. The moment changed everything. Halston quickly became the designer every woman wanted, and by the 1970s, he was crafting the flowing silhouettes and minimalist styles that defined an entire era. His clients, Liza Minnelli, Bianca Jagger, Elizabeth Taylor, made his creations iconic. His dresses moved with the body, capturing light, motion, and sensuality. But with success came relentless demands. Every season meant new collections, new fittings, new pressure. Halston was known for his precision, spending long nights reworking garments until they fell exactly the way he imagined. His studio pulsed with his energy, and his expectations were as high as his talent. In 1983, a corporate deal meant to expand his brand ended up stripping him of creative control. Losing authority over his own name wounded him deeply. Although he continued to work, the passion that once fueled him began to dim. Friends noticed his restlessness, the quiet frustration of a man trapped inside the empire he created but no longer ruled. By the late 1980s, Halston's health declined. He withdrew from the public eye, spending his final years in California far from the fashion world he once dominated. When he passed in 1990, it marked the closing of a brilliant but tumultuous chapter in American fashion. His name still echoes through history as a reminder of how fame, pressure, and artistry can collide in both incredible and devastating ways. Number 9. Issey Miyake. On August 5, 2022, the world said farewell to one of fashion's quiet revolutionaries. Issey Miyake, the designer who blended technology, art, and movement into clothing like no one else, passed away in Tokyo. His creations were calm, precise, and innovative, yet behind that serenity was a lifetime defined by discipline, long hours, and relentless experimentation. Miyake's gentle presence hid a work ethic that pushed far beyond ordinary limits. Born in Hiroshima in 1938, Miyake rarely spoke about his early life. Instead, he focused on rebuilding, innovating, and looking forward. After studying graphic design in Tokyo, he moved to Paris in the 1960s, where he worked for notable fashion houses and experienced firsthand the demanding pace of haute couture. Those years taught him the intensity required to survive in the industry, even as he dreamed of transforming it. When he returned to Japan, he founded the Miyake Design Studio in 1970. What followed was decades of groundbreaking invention: garments that folded like sculptures, pleats that held their shape through movement, and designs that merged engineering with elegance. To achieve this, Miyake worked endlessly, often into the late hours, collaborating with textile scientists and artists to perfect every concept. His studio became a laboratory of ideas, fueled by curiosity and an uncompromising pursuit of innovation. By the 2000s, his influence had spread across the globe. Architects, dancers, thinkers, and creatives gravitated toward his work, drawn to clothing that celebrated both freedom and structure. Yet even with worldwide acclaim, Miyake never slowed down. He oversaw multiple lines, curated exhibitions, and mentored the next generation, all while maintaining the meticulous routines that had defined his career. In 2022, when news of his passing became public, the world mourned not only a designer, but a philosopher of form. His legacy lives on in every pleat, every movement, every garment that carries his belief in beauty born from resilience. Issey Miyake's story reminds us that innovation often demands a lifetime of quiet sacrifice. Number 10. Kenzo Takada. On October 4, 2020, the world of fashion lost one of its most joyful and imaginative spirits. Kenzo Takada, the visionary behind the global brand Kenzo, passed away in Paris at 81. His designs were vibrant, full of life, and infused with cultural harmony. Yet behind the color and celebration was a lifetime of nonstop work, travel, and creative demands that pushed him far beyond the edge of rest. Born in Himeji, Japan in 1939, Kenzo discovered fashion through his sister's magazines. At a time when becoming a designer seemed impossible in Japan, he pursued his dream with quiet determination. After studying at Tokyo's Bunka Fashion College, he moved to Paris in 1965 with little money but an unstoppable vision. He began selling handmade garments at small markets, slowly capturing attention with his fearless use of color and bold prints. In 1970, he opened his first boutique, Jungle Jap, and Paris fell in love. His shows were energetic, spontaneous, and unlike anything the city had seen. He replaced the stiffness of haute couture with joy, movement, and celebration. By the mid-1970s, Kenzo had become an international sensation. But beneath the success were endless nights of sketching, sewing, managing teams, and creating designs that pushed the boundaries of imagination. Throughout the 1980s and 90s, Kenzo expanded his brand globally. He oversaw countless collections, balancing clothing, fragrance, and accessories. An empire built on creativity but powered by exhausting workloads. In 1993, he sold his brand to LVMH, but continued designing for years before retiring in 2000. Even in retirement, he never stopped creating. He painted, designed interiors, and returned to fashion with new ideas, refusing to let age or fatigue quiet his artistic voice. In 2020, while working on a new lifestyle project, Kenzo passed away during the global health crisis. Designers and admirers around the world mourned the loss of a man whose warmth matched the brightness of his work. Kenzo Takada's legacy lives in every joyful print and every fearless combination of color, a reminder that beauty can come from both passion and the heavy devotion behind it. Number 11. Thierry Mugler. On January 23, 2022, the fashion world was stunned by news from Paris. Thierry Mugler, the mastermind behind some of the most theatrical, futuristic, and powerful designs ever seen on a runway, was gone. For more than 4 decades, Mugler pushed fashion beyond clothing and into the realm of performance art. But behind the spectacle was a man who worked with relentless intensity, often sacrificing rest, health, and peace in pursuit of perfection. Born in Strasbourg, France in 1948, Mugler studied classical dance before turning to design. Movement shaped his entire vision. He didn't just create garments, he sculpted bodies, building silhouettes that were bold, sharp, and unforgettable. In the 1980s and 1990s, his runway shows became legendary, combining couture with theater, music, and fantasy. Each collection felt like stepping into another universe, but creating that universe took everything he had. Mugler was famously demanding of himself and his team. He worked obsessively, often through the night, perfecting every seam and every angle. Assistants remembered how he could spend hours adjusting a single detail until it matched the image he carried in his mind. His pursuit of innovation was endless, leaving little room for rest. He believed true art required sacrifice, and he lived as though the rules of time did not apply to him. By the late 1990s, fashion had shifted toward minimalism, leaving Mugler's maximalist vision at odds with the industry. After decades of exhaustion, pressure, and creative battles, he stepped away from fashion in 2002. But even in retirement, he reinvented himself, taking on photography, directing, and dramatic personal transformation with the same intensity he brought to design. Celebrities revived his iconic pieces, from Beyoncé to Lady Gaga, keeping his influence alive long after he left the runway. When he passed in 2022, tributes poured in from around the world, honoring a man whose imagination changed fashion forever. Thierry Mugler's legacy is one of impossible beauty, unyielding ambition, and a reminder that genius often demands more than a human life can carry. Number 12. Alber Elbaz. On April 24, 2021, the fashion world lost one of its kindest and most beloved creators. Alber Elbaz, known for his warmth, humor, and romantic approach to design, passed away in Paris at 59. His death shocked the industry, not only because of his talent, but because of the gentle humanity he brought into a world often defined by intensity and pressure. Behind his charming smile was a man who had spent decades giving every ounce of himself to his craft. Born in Casablanca, Morocco in 1961, Alber grew up in Israel, where he first fell in love with drawing clothes. With his mother's support, he pursued fashion and later studied at the Shenkar College of Engineering and Design. In the late 1980s, he moved to New York and worked under the esteemed Jeffrey Bean, where he developed the soft draping and feminine elegance that would become his signature. By the early 2000s, Alber had taken the helm at Lanvin, transforming the fading house into one of the most adored luxury brands of its time. His designs celebrated women. They were playful, graceful, and full of movement. Celebrities adored him, critics praised him. Yet behind that success, Alber worked endlessly. Each collection required months of labor, countless fittings, and continuous travel. He often joked about his exhaustion, using humor to hide how worn down he truly was. In 2015, after 14 years at Lanvin, he was abruptly dismissed, a moment that left him devastated. For the first time in years, he stepped away from the relentless cycle of fashion shows. But the fire to create never left him. In 2021, he launched AZ Factory, a new label built on comfort, technology, and inclusivity. He wanted fashion to be more human, more thoughtful, more real. But only months after its debut, he fell ill. His passing triggered an outpouring of grief from designers, models, and fans who admired not just his talent, but his heart. Alber Elbaz's legacy is one of kindness, imagination, and a deep love for the people he designed for. His life reminds us that even the gentlest souls can be worn down by the weight of perfection. Number 13. Azzedine Alaïa. On November 18, 2017, the world of fashion said goodbye to one of its most devoted masters. Azzedine Alaïa, often called the King of Cling, passed away in Paris at 82. His designs celebrated the human form with unmatched precision, and his dedication bordered on obsession. Behind the quiet elegance of his work was a life spent almost entirely in his atelier, cutting, sewing, and perfecting every garment by hand. Born in Tunisia in 1935, Alaïa was raised by his grandparents and studied sculpture before turning to dressmaking, a background that later shaped his extraordinary understanding of the body. In the late 1950s, he moved to Paris and worked for private clients, quickly gaining admiration for his remarkable craftsmanship. By the early 1980s, Alaïa had become a global sensation. His body-conscious silhouettes embraced the curves of the wearer, earning the loyalty of supermodels like Naomi Campbell and iconic muses like Grace Jones. Yet what set Alaïa apart was not only talent, but his refusal to bow to industry pressure. He rejected the traditional fashion calendar, believing creativity could not be rushed. Instead of presenting collections on schedule, he released them only when he felt they were truly ready. This independence came at a price: endless hours of hands-on work, late nights adjusting seams, and days spent perfecting the smallest details. Assistants recalled how he would work through meals, often forgetting time entirely. Alaïa lived above his studio, blurring the line between life and work. Fashion was not business to him, it was purpose. He rarely traveled, avoided the spotlight, and cared little for fame. What mattered was craft, integrity, and staying true to his vision. His atelier became a sanctuary where he poured every thought, every skill, and every moment into his creations. When he passed in 2017, tributes came from across the world. Designers praised his discipline, models remembered his kindness, admirers celebrated a man who never compromised. Azzedine Alaïa's story stands as a testament to devotion, a reminder that true artistry is built through patience, mastery, and a lifetime spent chasing perfection. Number 14. L'Oreine Scott. On March 17, 2014, heartbreaking news spread through New York City. L'Oreine Scott, the celebrated designer and stylist whose work defined red carpet elegance for some of the world's most famous women, was gone. To the public, she was grace, refinement, and sophistication. But behind the beauty she created was a life weighed down by pressure, financial strain, and the exhausting demands of an unforgiving industry. Born Laura Bambra in Roy, Utah in 1964, she grew up tall, striking, and instantly noticeable. Her height led her into modeling, and by her late teens she was living in Paris, appearing in magazines and walking runways. Yet her true calling revealed itself behind the scenes. She had a sharp eye for proportion, detail, and timeless glamour, skills that soon turned her into one of Hollywood's most trusted stylists. Her transition into design came naturally. In 2006, she launched her own label, Loren Scott. Her aesthetic was unmistakable: fitted silhouettes, luxurious fabrics, subtle drama, and a touch of old Hollywood allure. Celebrities like Nicole Kidman, Amy Adams, and Sarah Jessica Parker adored her creations. To the outside world, her success looked effortless. But inside the studio, she worked endlessly, sketching late into the night, managing production, and carrying the weight of an entire brand on her shoulders. Behind the glamorous image, her company struggled financially. Running an independent label meant constant pressure: deadlines, budgets, investors, and expectations that never paused. Those close to her later revealed how tirelessly she worked to keep her business alive, often handling responsibilities alone that would normally be managed by entire teams. She traveled constantly, juggling fittings, designs, and meetings while suppressing the stress that mounted quietly behind the scenes. On that March morning in 2014, her story ended far too soon. Shock rippled through the fashion world, prompting discussions about the hidden pressures creators endure. Tributes poured in from designers, stylists, and celebrities who remembered her elegance, kindness, and remarkable talent. Loren Scott's legacy remains woven into the red carpet history she helped shape, and stands as a reminder of how unseen struggles can exist behind even the most polished beauty. Number 15. Stephen Sprouse. On March 4, 2004, the creative world lost one of its boldest rebels. Stephen Sprouse, the designer who fused punk attitude with high fashion long before the industry was ready for it, passed away in New York at 50. His work was loud, daring, neon bright, and unapologetically original. But behind the shock value and street energy was a man who spent years struggling with nonstop work, financial instability, and the exhausting pressure of staying ahead of a world that didn't always understand him. Born in Dayton, Ohio in 1953, Sprouse showed artistic talent from childhood. As a teenager, he sketched clothes inspired by rock music and modern art, visions that would later define his unmistakable style. After studying at the Rhode Island School of Design, he moved to New York and became an assistant to Houston, learning precision, tailoring, and the intense discipline required in high fashion. But Sprouse's own creativity was wilder, louder, and impossible to contain. In 1984, he launched his first collection, an explosion of graffiti prints, neon colors, luxury fabrics, and downtown rebellion. His runways felt like underground concerts, models strutting under bright lights to rock music, wearing clothes that captured the pulse of New York's youth culture. Artists and musicians adored him, but traditional buyers didn't know what to do with his radical vision. The originality that made him iconic also made his business unstable, and Sprouse poured everything, time, energy, money, into each collection. The fashion cycles were ruthless. Financial setbacks followed him, and the pressure to keep producing burned through his strength. Yet his influence never truly faded. In the late 1990s, Marc Jacobs brought him back into the spotlight with a Louis Vuitton collaboration. Their graffiti-covered reinterpretation of the Vuitton monogram became a global sensation, finally giving Sprouse the recognition he deserved. But behind the comeback, his health was declining. Even in his final years, Sprouse continued creating with the same restless, electric energy that defined him. When he passed away in 2004, tributes came from designers, artists, and musicians who had drawn inspiration from his fearless imagination. Stephen Sprouse's legacy is a reminder that the most groundbreaking visionaries often pay the highest price, living fast, creating intensely, and leaving behind a mark that never fades. The stories of these 15 legendary designers reveal a truth often hidden behind the lights of the runway. Each one shaped the world of fashion with unforgettable creativity, discipline, and vision. Yet their journeys also carried a heavy cost. Sleepless nights, impossible expectations, and the relentless pressure to innovate pushed them far beyond ordinary limits. Behind every iconic collection was a life dedicated entirely to the pursuit of beauty, sometimes at the expense of health, peace, and time. Their legacies continue to inspire new generations, reminding us that fashion is more than glamour. It is sacrifice, devotion, and the quiet resilience of those who give everything to create something lasting. These 15 designers left behind more than clothing. They left behind stories, powerful, haunting, and unforgettable. Stories that remind us that brilliance often shines brightest in the shadows.